Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here in Tampa, Florida, where we're covering the National Defense Industrial Association's annual SOFIC Conference and Trade Show, one of the world's leading gatherings of special operators as well as the industry that serves them. From a worldwide perspective, our coverage here is sponsored by FLIR Systems, and we're honored to be talking to retired United States Army Major General Jim Boozer, who is the Chief of Staff here at NDIA. Your boss, General Hawk Carlisle, is flying his way down here as we speak, given that the conference formally begins tomorrow. Sir, tell us a little bit, every year each conference has a topic, a focus, and what you guys are trying to accomplish. Talk to us a little bit about this year's topic and what you guys hope to achieve. This year
Actually is pretty unique because this is the second year we're using the same theme for SOFIC, and it's a simple one. This was a theme generated by the Commanding General of U.S. Special Operations Command, General Tony Thomas. And the theme is win the current fight, transform capabilities to win the future fight, and people, taking care of people and their families. And so what we're trying to do here as a co-host with SOCOM is to generate opportunities for collaboration to get after all of those. Now, we'll spend a lot of time specifically getting after transform, but the networking, the collaboration that's actually started today, where industry from across the spectrum, small companies, medium-sized companies, large-sized companies, are getting after good discussions with Special Operations Command on how to do business with them. So there's a learning curve here, and we do that up front. So the conference has actually started today with that collaborative, cooperative, strategic dialogue between the entities, industry, all sizes, academia, and then our host, Special Operations Command.
I stand corrected. That's right. I should have said that because there are CRADA and a whole bunch of acquisition panels and things that are going on,
which are very important.
Which are very important. And fortunately, you guys are also doing them in different variations of some of the same themes, so that if somebody missed it on the first day, they can catch up and get some of that goodness, because there are a lot of particularly small and medium-sized enterprises here, given the buying nature of the Special Operations Command. You were an infantryman. Your last job before you retired was commanding U.S. forces in U.S. Army troopers in Japan. But I want to ask you, a large part of what mentally folks, when they think about the special operations community, think of it as ISIS. They think of it, again, on operations against the Taliban and elsewhere in the world. They tend to think a little bit less about the future fight and the role of special operators in that. And as somebody who remembers the Cold War, some of the toughest and best special operators were engaged in Europe to fight the Soviet Union, for example, which is something that we lose a little bit of sight of. Talk to us a little bit about that transformation, the transformation in thinking, and what leadership is talking about how these forces will be used as you look into a great power age.
Right. So the other thing we're trying to get after with this conference is very important, and this is specifically after that transform piece of the theme this year, is taking a look at all of the capabilities that our industry partners have, and literally put that capabilities toolbox at the front doorstep of Special Operations Command so they can see all the capabilities. It's a wonderful opportunity where you can look and see widget A. If I could take widget A and put capability B on it and put it on platform C, what a wonderful thing. And it all occurs here. So it's more than just passing out business cards. It's more than just networking. We are really driving strategic dialogue. So those future requirements, we can get after them in all kinds of ways. And so that's what this venue and forum, I think, does. It's all about building relationships and then building capability that comes out of those relationships.
You were a former Army leader. How are you working with leadership at the SOCOM level, at the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Command level, at the USASOC level, the Army side and on Navy side, to craft a conference that hits some of the right topics? Obviously, leadership wants to get its messages out. They want to get its messages, particularly from an acquisition standpoint, to a receptive audience of suppliers from all around the world, as well as international delegations, which you've got here, and I want to ask you about that in a minute. How do you guys work with leadership to ensure that all of these messages are tuned so that at the end of the day, the conference is rewarding for everybody who's participating?
Yeah, so it is absolutely a collaborative effort. And I think we really use three principles to get after that. We build collaborative and cooperative teams on both sides, Department of Defense across the military services, congressional leaders, academia, and our defense industry partners. We build those cooperative, collaborative teams, whatever the issue or the topic du jour might be. We champion the issues that are coming out of that, and then we convene these legal and ethical forums so that discussion can happen. And so it's that dialogue back and forth with senior leaders across the departments to allow that to happen.
And a couple of months ago, there was a prominent letter that went out from the Deputy Defense Secretary seeking to sort of throttle back presence at major trade shows. You know, only one general officer, only one civilian at a time. I believe the whole effort was to cut down on what's referred to sometimes discharitably as military tourism. But that seems to have changed. I mean, I know that all the trade associations became very worried when they saw that. Is that still a concern? Because the Deputy Secretary has put out new guidance that's a little bit more flexible. Talk to us about where we are on that continuum now, because this show, you know, appears to is going to be pretty well attended from a general officer and senior civilian standpoint.
Yes, and so, you know, we certainly at NDIA follow the department's rules and regulations and their policies as it specifically pertains to conferences and venues like this, these symposium. But they're so very, very important. The dialogue must continue between the department and our defense industry partners. It's got to continue. The time now is not to stifle that dialogue. And so we ensure that we don't have too many senior leaders appearing at these conferences, so we don't get the perception that you just described. So we manage that. When we have conferences that are hosted by a combatant command, like a Special Operations Command, this is their conference. They can invite who they wish, and those rules and regulations allow them to do that. So we're very mindful of those policies. We were also very happy to see Deputy Secretary of Defense Shanahan publish essentially what I just said. Now is not the time to stifle the dialogue. The dialogue must continue. If we're going to continue to have the competitive edge, this is where we get the competitive edge.
Let me take you to what people will see different this year. I mean, even though the topic is the same topic, every year you're trying to make it a better an experience for those folks who are demonstrating here, and it's always a treat seeing. You know, you don't normally see special operations helicopters going, you know, right past a conference center and then weaving between buildings. So that was pretty cool earlier. But from, you know, an on-the-floor perspective, what are some of the things you're doing differently so that exhibitors have, you know, an easier time of it or a more rewarding time of it?
Right. So, you know, NDIA has been at this now for almost 100 years, and we hope to continue the next 100 years, you know, as we work through and change. So we are changing the way we do things. There are a lot of things that have not changed, so you'll see some of the standard things. The demonstration that you described, we'll certainly have that here on Wednesday. But we're trying to make the experience of walking through the exhibits, the experience of listening to the panels, to listening to the speakers, a little more dynamic and involving the audience to generate participation. This is a participation sport, quite frankly. And so we're going to generate participation with a new technique called Slido, where the audience gets to type in their questions. You know, in the old days, you used to write the question on a piece of paper and hand it to a moderator, and they would screen it, and it might make its way up to the speaker or to the panel. This year, everyone in the audience can type in their question. People can see those questions. They can like those questions, generate them up to the top, so the most important questions get answered. So we're going to try that for the first time this year. I've seen it work well in some conferences. I think here at SOFIC, it's going to be a big hit.
As somebody who's done a little bit of moderating, I mean, I think that that's really, really great because you can really focus on what a top question is that the audience is interested in, as opposed to burning through some questions which may be important to one person in the audience, but maybe is not as important for, you know, I mean, that main hall is going to hold a pretty significant audience. Now, you guys are constantly, you know, you said you're at this game for 100 years. You continue to expand your product offering, and there's a new conference up on Army Science and Technology in August in Washington. Talk to us a little bit about what you want to achieve there, what the topic is, you know, in a more specific manner, and you know, why this topic, why now?
Yeah, and so we're going to hold co-host again a conference in August in Washington, D.C., August 21st through 23rd. And it's the Army Science and Technology Symposium and Showcase. This is an important conference for our Army. They have not had one of these in 7 to 8 years. And what we hope to do here is to focus on the Army of the future. And the Chief of Staff, General Milley, has his top modernization priorities. Those are all going to get discussed in terms of science and technology and the capabilities required to support those priorities of modernization. I think we're going to hear a little bit about the Army's Futures Command, which is the Army's way to get after this bureaucratic acquisition process that we have, and tie that together with promoting innovation and working on the innovation process. So, and which happens to be a couple of our top 6 strategic priorities here at NDIA. Promoting innovation, fostering small businesses, just like this conference, the Army S&T conference will get after that, as well as strengthening the defense industrial base and workforce.
And are you at all concerned that that time in August might be a tough time for folks to be able to make it, given that, you know, folks are just coming off of summer break? You know, was there a little bit of concern that August 21 might be, you know, you might be throwing a really big party, but not as many people as you'd like will show up?
Yeah, so, you know, we spend a lot of time looking at the calendar and ensuring that we've got the right dates for these conferences. We certainly, in this case, worked those dates very, very closely with the Army to kind of fit that conference in between this conference here that we're holding, as well as some of the big conferences that occur in September and October. So we think this is going to work out very nicely for the Army.
Well, sir, best of luck in the coming days, and best of luck, and hope that we'll have an opportunity to see you guys in the conference in August. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.